Hello, everybody, and welcome to this bonus episode on the Rewatch Project feed. I'm Mike from the Rewatch Project. Be flying solo for this one, but this is an interview that I am conducting with Dean Haglund, better known as Langley from the X-Files. Dean is an actor, stand-up comedian, improviser, artist, and inventor, no less. I had an opportunity to have a very enjoyable conversation with him, just to put a cap on the coverage of the X-Files that we have been doing with Hannah watching it for the first time. So please check out the Rewatch Project podcast with Hannah and Mike, and also the other videos on our YouTube channel, including a little bit of other X-Files content. So let's go for it.
Aha.
Hey, there he is. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Good. Greetings from New Zealand.
Thank you. Greetings from Detroit. Sunny.
Wow, nice bit of pop art behind you there.
Yeah. I tell everybody I'm an artist, and then I do these Zoom calls and I don't have a thing to show for it. So I painted that wall just to go, oh yeah, look, my art studio. Look how arty it is.
Oh, wow, wonderful. Live inside the art, and then you'll never forget. That's amazing.
That's right. It's like, oh yeah, I do that stuff. I should not be walking the dogs or just watching TV.
Oh, hey, before I forget, congratulations on 17 years of podcasting.
Yeah, I know. That you got to hand to my co-producer, co-host, Phil Lerness. He's the organized one. Where me, I would have said, I'm moving to Australia. That's that. But he kept it up, and I don't know how we did, because I was there for 4 years, and we still maintained a free show every Monday all through that.
For viewers and listeners who maybe don't know, could you just tell us a little bit about your podcast? Because 17 years, so you must have been in that first wave of podcasters.
Yeah. So Phil and I had adjoining production offices in this office building in Hollywood, and we had shared an assistant. And every Monday we'd come in and go, oh, hey man, I saw this movie or saw this play, and we chat and or oh, this celebrity died, or my friend did this, whatever. Morning gossip around the water cooler. And the assistant thought, oh man, this is great. Oh, hey, you guys should record it and do one of these podcasty things. Because at the time, every comedian in LA suddenly were trying to do podcasts. And so it was like, oh yeah, okay. So then we did that, and people liked it. And then we just never stopped and gave up the offices. We lost the assistant, moved on to greener pastures. And then we all moved and got married and traveled around the world. And we still maintain that. In fact, he's here in Detroit, and he's coming to this studio to record our 17th anniversary show. So awesome. It'll be like old times sitting around the water cooler on a Monday afternoon.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I think one of the great things about maintaining that longevity with a podcast is it gives nice structure to your life, to have that consistency as well, in the same way that listening to podcasts does for a lot of people, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm always shocked when sometimes in my feed or somewhere, it's like, oh, here's the Chill Pack Hollywood Hour. Oh, I'm going to scroll back and listen 10 years before. It's like, wow, I sounded like that. I was doing that. You can hear yourself go through the span of time from everything from, what was the 2012, the Mayan calendar, end of the world panic and all that sort of thing.
It is interesting. I mean, my co-host isn't with me here today. You may have noticed she's actually attending to our children on a Saturday morning. Okay. But I mean, I've been podcasting for almost 17 years as well. I started sort of back then, and I went back and listened to an early episode, and it's really interesting because not only did I sound incredibly young, but I sound so affected. You can hear all of the contrivance slip away over time.
I know. Where you start shedding the need to really be entertaining and just do it for yourself at that point. Now it's my show, as opposed to what do the listeners want to hear? That's
right. And just to pull the curtain back a little bit, I recorded a sort of brief introduction before we jumped on the call. And, looking back at your career, of course, you're an actor, but also an artist, podcaster, stand-up, frigging inventor. You got a lot of feathers in your cap. What kind of household does somebody like that grow out of? What was your environment like as a kid? Was your house full of smart asses, or was it a more conservative environment?
Yeah, no. It was very, your wit and your comedy was your surviving mechanism around the house. All my siblings, hilarious. My dad was a humorous speech contest winner for Toastmasters International.
What an
So
incredible honor that must be.
oh yeah, he would travel and give humorous speeches around and compete with other people. Trying, Toastmasters is a speech organization for executives and stuff, so that they can better develop public speaking. But he loved it so much he carried on and always the humor speech contest. In fact, when he retired, he was so used to being the MC of the retirement parties that there was nobody to MC his own retirement party.
Wow, because
So
he just
he
had a complete monopoly on that world.
totally. It's just like, let Haglund do that one. And so he had to actually host his own retirement party. And he thought it was great. He really had a great time.
Wow, so it's sink or swim in your household then when it came to getting attention, I'd imagine.
Yep. Yeah, it was pretty fun though. I had two sisters and an older brother, so I was the youngest. So my comedy chops had to be honed to a tight five, as they say, and a lot of practical jokes, laughter all around. And we grew up in a small town in the Canadian prairies, so it was easy living. Well, easy living. If you say blizzards are easy living and farm accidents are easy living, but yeah, it was not big city crime or anything like that. It was small town farm accidents and the such.
Wow, so it sounds like one part Fun Family, one part Johnny Cash song then by the
That's right. I grew up in the wheat fields. Yeah, I'm almost a mockery of a country song personified.
And what was the first time that you added any kind of, I guess, formality to that or structure to that? Was that something that you did in school or?
Yeah. So my elementary school had a very progressive principal who thought at assembly in the morning, each grade should do a little talent thing of whatever. And so I started talking my friends into outlandish skits and lip syncing to songs from Phantom of the Paradise and, just like whatever crazy idea I had. Somehow I had the ability to convince guys who had no interest in doing it to be in my band or whatever, and got huge laughs right like from then on. And then some of those skits were so funny that we then did them on the evening Christmas concerts and that sort of thing. So that was the beginning of the structure for sure.
And was that a gradual progression into becoming professional, or was there a holy shit moment, a moment where you're like, wow, okay, I'm really doing this? Or, a real stepping out onto the stage, so to speak?
Yeah, no, I was already I was doing a teenage theater after school theater program with a thing called Prairie Theater Exchange. So I was doing plays and stuff really early on, but doing single stand up happened when I moved to Vancouver to go to university, and then started doing amateur night and Vancouver theater sports, where the likes of Ryan Stiles and Colin Mockery got their
Oh,
chops.
the Whose Line Is It Anyway, guys?
Yeah. So I performed with them for 10 years before they made it to TV and stuff. So there was a group of about 40 improvisers, all very successful. And I did at one point from 1990. Now I'm sounding really old, but I did 10 shows a week for 4.5 years on
Wow.
stage. Yeah, all improvised, but some partially scripted and some partially improvised.
And
And
what was
that's where
your goal? Was this a means to get into TV and film, or was it kind of just the draw of performance in general?
it was more the energy that was inside of me needed to come out because I'm, fairly energetic. And so it had to, for me, it was just like, not quite therapy, but it was a way to balance my whole electrical system, frankly. So yeah, performing till 2 a.m. and then waking up at 9 a.m. the next day was like, oh, that's easy. And so I didn't really have a goal in mind, but all the other improvisers had agents and they were already doing. That was the height of TV shows in Vancouver being filmed there. Street Justice, The Commish,
Of a
all
Stephen
those
Cannell shows.
yeah. He actually built one of the first TV studios up there, just as we were getting our chops at the theater sports. So they were always looking for funny character actors in all those shows that Stephen J. Cannell wrote. Oh my God, he would just throw out the dumbest ideas, and they would suddenly be a series for 2 to 3 seasons. Um, what was that? There was one. It's old detectives, and they have an old part, and then young detectives, and they're all computers.
Oh
And
yeah. There were
yeah.
those, and then of course, I mean, there was the. I had Donald Belisario on the show.
Oh yeah,
Magnum PI, and
yeah.
he mentored under Cannell, and
Oh right.
he had some stories about Cannell. I tell you, there wasn't an idea that ever came into Cannell's head that didn't make it onto screen. I don't think.
It's true. My friend had developed a piece of software that was supposed to speed up production, and align all the production elements of Teamsters and catering and all that sort of thing. And Stephen J. Cannell was giving a reading at a bookstore of one of his detective novels. After he retired from TV, he wrote a couple detective novels. And so afterwards, me and my friend said, "Okay, how many projects do you have that haven't been completed yet?" And he goes, "None. I did them all.
Yeah,
I cleared the slate of every idea I had, and
no
they all went."
wastage.
Yeah, yeah. And then it was like, "Oh, I got nothing to pitch you. Then you won't like this software at all." So
Yeah.
that was
So I mean, so geographically, you were perfectly placed then, weren't you? What was the first? Do you remember the first time you saw yourself on television?
well, there was in Winnipeg there was a Canadian show called Littlest Hobo about a
Oh, I
stray.
remember. I could sing the theme song to that. That was a very memorable. Maybe
You
tomorrow
cannot.
I'll settle down. That was that show, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was the dumbest thing. It's just a dog kind of solving crime, but not really.
Hey,
More
I won't hear you talk smack about the littlest hobo friend.
well, it's similar to Skippy the kangaroo.
Right.
That how did that kangaroo open the car door on the Jeep and turn on the microphone? The kangaroo doesn't have articulated paws like that. Um, yeah, but I they needed a group of kids in the background, and so I was way in the back, but my blonde hair stood out. So I remember seeing myself on an episode of Littlest Hobo. But the first kind of real thing was I was a bad guy on the commish. So that was kind of the first real production. I can't remember the episode, but I was a bad guy about 3 or 4 times because I had the long blonde hair that was real. So I always get drug dealer number two, bad guy, and it wasn't until the X Files and they said, "Oh, hey, that long hair is not the bad guy; he's the good guy." And that then all my auditions switched over to quirky good guy stuff and not so many bad guy greaser. In
Yeah.
fact, roids where I stand in trailer door and it all says degenerate, deadbeat, drug dealer, criminal. It's like, oh yeah, that's the list of them.
Because back in the late 80s, the film convention of what necessitates a street tough was very different to what it is today. But of course, you mentioned the idea of, I guess, your character in the X Files revolutionizing the way that pop culture perceived the idea of the nerd as well. I mean, before that, it was the horned rim glasses and the pocket protectors
Yeah, that's right.
up until that
And
point.
pushing up. Yeah, and kind of being introverted and all that sort of thing. But when I was at university, the theater arts, I did a multidisciplinary degree. So I was actually trained to be a performance artist so that I could do modern dance, art, theater, and music. And right next to our department was the computer science department. And so we would often cross and so I got to know a couple of those guys, and they were all into punk rock, and I didn't know any one of them that was in any sort of, they were eccentric for sure, but nobody was really so shy that they wouldn't talk to you. And so I got along with a lot of those guys, and that's sort of what I based the character on. It's like, yeah, man, the one guy was doing sound checks for Skid Row, for crying out loud. He was made software for that band, so it was that kind of thing. Like, oh, that's really cool.
I mean, it was, I think, speaking as an audience member, I was one of those people. I was probably one of the people that bothered Frank Spotnitz in the pre-AOL days online,
Oh
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, you mentioned the long hair, the look. Was that your look at the time? Was that something that you cultivated for performance?
Well, the glasses were fake. I didn't have to wear the glasses. So, but I did have long hair just as I was lazy and didn't want to cut it. And I could perform on stage and do stand up, and nobody cared. And everybody said, oh, yeah, hey, on amateur night, it was very handy because you just see a slew of one comic after another doing 5 minutes. And then I come out with the long hair and a leather jacket, and suddenly I look like a biker and, do smart, like a biker from Mensa. I think I was introduced one time on stage. So that just sort of worked, and I didn't have to. Actually, I did cut it for a play, a uni play. I brush cut it because I was a military in a play by Nick Drake called The Body. And I was a general in that. And so I shaved it all off, but then I let it all grow out again. And yeah, that's pretty funty, actually. I forgot about that. So there was a point there where I was a short-haired comic. But
wow, your hair must like grow like grass then in order for you to have got back there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like I have to shave every 2 days or I look like I'm homeless. It's crazy.
Obviously, this look was synonymous with the character you play on the X-Files. But were you aware of the show before you started up?
No, it was first season, and I get a call, and you're auditioning for everything and anything, and my agent said, "Oh yeah, you gonna audition for the X-Files." I go, "What's that?" I don't know. It's like FBI and aliens. I don't know. Whatever. Just go. And that first audition was so weird because normally when I go to audition, it's the other 5 long-haired guys in Vancouver, and we're all auditioning for the same bad guy or the same drug dealer. And you just go, hey, Luke, hey, Dave, hey, and everybody in the room. This one was like 30 people, and some were like shaved in camouflage jumpsuits, and others, they were like comedians I knew. And it was like so wide across the board.
Was that because they were casting for all 3 of the gunmen, or was it just that they hadn't defined the characters at this point?
Yeah, but they were looking, they didn't know what they wanted. So it was all really quirky. And it was only just supposed to be the one episode. So they were just trying to find, 3 variants because James Wong and Glenn Morgan said they were going through an airport and guys were handing out UFO literature. And one was in a leather jacket, one had a rock t-shirt, and one was in a suit. And the 3 of them together, and they all went, "Oh, we're gonna have to put that in a show because that's pretty funny." So when I came in, they were like, "Okay," and then I got a call from my agent going, "Okay, you got a call back, but be prepared to read either Frohickey or Byers."
Wow.
So they were like switching it around of what that look was and who was what, and so I did 5 callbacks for that thing, reading against other buyers. And I never read against Tom because the director apparently said, "Okay, for Froikie, we need somebody short and weaselly like the first AD, the first assistant director, Tom." And then everybody went, "Well, he went to theater school. It's only a couple lines. Let that guy read it." Okay. It's like, okay.
One casual but life-changing decision later. Did they ever like a chemistry test the 3 of you together?
No. It was just we showed up on the day, and I hadn't even met Bruce Harwood either.
Wow.
I had chemistry tests with all these other guys, and then I show up and I go, "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm Bruce Harwood." "Oh, Dean, hey." "And who'd they get for the other guy?" "Oh, the first AD." Wow, what kind of crap show is this? They can't even get another actor. They just weasel in a crew guy, and then that first scene was like in a cold bank, and we were, the writing was so great that you knew just to relax and hang out and laugh, and and now you just come from intense theater training where you're totally relaxed and your body's so loose, so it was easy just to like hang out and not be nervous and just run the lines. It was great. It was a really fun first episode. And then the glasses were fake. I threw them back in a giant plastic bag. "Yeah, thanks. See you, suckers. Hey, I'll get my check." And then I don't know what 5 weeks later, 6 weeks, it's like, "Oh, they want you back to do what?" "To do that character again." "What?" Like, yeah, we couldn't believe it. So,
and of course, this was the early 90s where this was the era of episodic TV. So You know,
Right.
that you were like, well, it's that story of the week. But it was such a great instinct on the part there, because I guess the diversity of the three of you, what that says in shorthand to the audience, of course, is the only thing that these people have in common is the mission, is the
Right.
obsession
The
that
obsession
they've
for the
got, that
truth.
sort of
Yeah.
obsessive element of it. And with the characters, of course, you would be like I say, as a geek, as somebody who identified like that at the time, to use a modern term, we felt very seen, I think, for the first time. Did you
Well,
get that
that
reaction? Did you feel that you were kind of, I guess, with Kevin Smith and people like that, a poster boy for that part of pop culture?
not initially. Initially, it was before even I'm going to say HTTP. There was the RNet, right? The Usernet, and it was all amber screen or amber letters on a black screen. And I was at a party with those said computer nerds from my university, and we're all hanging out. And they go, "Hey, man, have you seen the internet?" Like, well, yeah, I seen it. I got an account. No, no, but there's a news group. They're following the X-Files, and they're just talking about you guys. I'm like, what? They go, yeah. They saying that this proves that Chris Carter and the writers are lurking in their site, and that they're basing the characters on this culture. And I'm like, no, show me. And then at the party, instead of talking to other people, we're all standing around a stupid monitor and pulling up all the feed on it. And then that group basically became Alt TV X Files news group, and that's where Frank and Chris and Vince and John Scheiben, they were all on that, getting feedback immediately after an episode aired, right? Because as Frank said, you call your mom, used to go, "What do you think of the show?" "I didn't like the color of the couch," or something unhelpful. Whereas now suddenly you got this great immediate feedback of fans of the show. So it was the first time there was a symbiotic relationship between creators and fans.
Right.
And they would use the Gunmen as a way to stoke that. So we would have to say lines that they directly stole from Alt TV X, or the news groups. And then one episode I said, "Hey, do you want to hop on the internet and nitpick the scientific inaccuracies of Earth
Earth
2?
2. I love
So specific.
What a perfect choice of show that was. It was just the right level of kind of recognizable, but not
Yeah.
but niche enough to say something about the characters.
Yeah. That's something we would all watch and go, "Come on," as they do now in every sci-fi show. So yeah, that could kind of example is how I think the Gunmen grew to be the phenomena that they were.
And when did you start to notice that bleeding into the real three-dimensional world? I guess when you started being recognized, or when you started to feel, I guess, the heat of the show.
Yeah. Well, Vancouver, a lot of people had already seen me on stage for years. So they went, "Oh, hey, man. Yeah, hey, good on you." Like, and oh, hey, do you know stuff about computers? Because mine's acting up, and I wonder if you can come over.
You became tech support for
Totally. Random tech support for strangers walking in the street. And then, And then from there, it was like, I get the odd, weird call, like from Boston, a couple called my agent in Vancouver, and they went, "Hey, congratulations. You were that waiter from MIT that waited at our table. We liked you so much, and now we see that you're on the X-Files.
Oh,
Way to go."
wonderful.
Yeah. And I went, "I never went to MIT, and I've never been to Boston." And they were like, "What? No, that was totally you. You were the waiter. You were our waiter. This is Rick, right?" And I'm like, "No, Dean is not a stage name. That's my real name." And they were like vastly disappointed. So clearly there was a waiter with long blonde hair who may have had a semblance of to me, but they thought for sure I was that guy. So that was kind of like, oh, is this what being famous is? Being mistaken for other people? And so that started the whole beginning of it for sure.
And were you guys on recurring contracts, or were you day players?
Just day players for the first 5 years, I think, till
5.
Unusual.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to disparage my terrible Canadian agent at the time, But yeah, those guys didn't know how to negotiate out of a
Put a ring on it.
Yeah, right. So because I was doing stand up at that eventually headlining across America, I moved to LA because the flights were cheaper than out of Vancouver. And then I got an agent, and that guy said, "What are you guys doing, man? You should be on recurring contracts, not, and a guaranteed number of episodes per season."
Mm.
I'm like, "Oh yeah, hey, that's a good idea. Can you get that done?"
Did you move because of the X-Files location change, or was that just a?
No, that was a coincidence. I had moved already, but like a year or two before that, but I kept a place in Vancouver. So I had uh, two roommates in Los Angeles that were fellow Canadian actors, and we all lived together. But then I would just sort of fly in, stay overnight, and then get back to the airport, and then fly to, Fort Wayne, Indiana, for,
Right.
somewhere Raleigh, North Carolina, and headline at a club, do 6, 7 shows, and then either fly back to LA if I'm going out the next week, or back to Vancouver if I have a week or two off.
Did the X-Files start to affect your acts at all? Did you have people coming along to see
Yeah.
Langley from the X-Files, or?
That's exactly what happened. In fact, uh, my whole act started because I didn't want to do X-File conventions. So Creation X-File conventions had said, and even some producers said, "Hey man, you should go to conventions. You're funny, And I got, yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't really think that's for me. And then they said, yeah, come your first one, Fresno, California. You signed some autographs, and you got 45 minutes to talk with the audience and take questions or something. Do whatever you want." And at that time, because I was performing every Friday night, I hadn't watched the show. I haven't even seen myself in the show at that point. I didn't have a VCR. And so I went, I can't talk.
I'm not qualified to do
I'm not
this.
qualified. I have no, they're going to ask me questions. In episode 6, when that guy did that thing, I go, I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be like the Saturday Night Live sketch when Dana Carvey is asking William Shatner about episode 2 of season 4, and he's just like, I don't know.
yeah, it's a show. Yeah, no. So at that time, I was touring northern British Columbia with a fellow improviser, and we went to some very rough bars above the Arctic Circle and in tree mining towns and logger towns. And some of those guys would get very drunk and very angry, and we would be doing 2-man improv on stage, which is very hard to do in a bar with drunks, because when you ask for what's a reason 2 guys go to the mall, everybody thinks that's their permission to shout and yell and scream stupid things, all like just go nuts. So we had developed, him and I, this ability to take the drunkest guy from the audience, bring him on stage with one of us, improvise with him for 5 or 10 minutes in a certain game, an improv game, while the other one left to get the bouncer to say, as soon as that scene is finished, kick that guy out of here. Because the bouncers went, oh, hey, it's a free for all. So they would all just, fold up their arms and not even pay attention to the audience. And so those 4 games that we had developed with drunks, I put together and strung it together as an improvised episode of the X-Files.
Oh, amazing.
So it started with, something weird happens and somebody dies. Then there's a autopsy scene, and I had the lab coat and guy did my arms. And then as Langley, and I do a scene with a drunk Mulder. And then the big ender, I do battle with the alien or whatever, right? And so the first time I did that in Fresno, all the producers and the executives from Fox Network were there, and they saw that and they just went, hey, what are you doing for the next 5 years? We're going to do a lot of these conventions. You want to be like almost at every one of them doing that show? That was amazing. And then from that, I got a New York comedy agent, and he just sent me to clubs left, right, and center. And I don't even think he ever saw my show. He just heard that I improvised an episode of the X-Files live on stage, and it's the guy from the X-Files. And that took me to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival that I did 3 years in a row, and then toured the world, basically. Did 2 England tours, did the West End at the Trafalgar Theater, did Paris, did Tel Aviv. Wow. I did, it was crazy how much that show traveled.
My gosh, what a gift! And of
I
course,
know.
one of the other gifts that you received from the X Files, of course, was the spin-off show. And somebody clearly who has also done very well out of that is one Vince Gilligan. I was just
Yes.
wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your experiences of working with Vince. He seemed very much the voice of the gunman in many ways.
Yeah, yeah. He is the most surprising writer you've ever seen, because the things that, like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, Lone Gunman, all the things that are so dark, he's the most mild-mannered. He's got a genteel South Carolina accent.
They're the ones you got to watch out for.
Yeah, I know, right? And then he just churns out this dark, dark stuff. And he said, "Oh yeah, man, we're gonna do this episode, and I'm interested in the car that runs on water, and and all the writers were suddenly very pleased that they didn't have to write dark, heavy stuff of the X Files, so they lightened it up, and it was kind of more jokey than what we were used to. And when it got canceled, Vince said, "My biggest regret in showbiz is that show didn't do a second season. We had such a great second season planned for it." And he said, if I had more power, if I had the power I had now with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, I would have forced a second season of
He
that
still
show."
talks about Lone Gunman.
Yeah, I know. Is that amazing? It's quite an honor. And it's always a joy to see him at various conventions or events in Los Angeles.
It's interesting because one of the reasons I reached out to you for this was my wife and I, for the Rewatch Project, one of the podcasts we do, we've just watched all 11 seasons of the X Files and the 2 movies, and
Wow.
and we've my wife had never seen it before. She's a big sci-fi fan, but it was just this big gap. So she it was really great watching it through her experience. And anytime Vince Gilligan's name came up, she got excited. Obviously, anytime Darren Morgan's name came up, she got very excited as well. There are these
Right. Oh, yeah, yeah.
there are these signifiers. But what I think I was wondering about as well was that something that really jumped out at us watching it now is the idea of the X-Files' place in cultural history in regards to the idea of truth. I
Right.
mean, it's very interesting to see that, we have a lot of TV shows, obviously, like Lost, where people talk about how, oh, they're making it up as they go. They don't know how it's going to end and all that. And that was something, a criticism that the X-Files got. But I think watching it now, it's really interesting how the show isn't about what's in the box. It isn't about what is the secret. It seems to be
Right.
very much about the idea of truth. What does truth mean? Personal truth. Is there truth? Now, of
Right.
course, there's been a darkening of that
Right.
subject. Like back in the 90s, conspiracies were fun. And I think most people would agree that conspiracies aren't fun anymore.
Yeah.
How do you see the show now in regards to this idea of truth?
Yeah, well, that's a bit. I do have some guilt that I started QAnon from the early stages, right? That you sort of put an idea out there that maybe you can't trust this institution or that government body or whatever, and that you start now threading together alternative ideas, right? And so the tagline, "The truth is out there," was kind of the beginning, so that it's not a communal truth that we all put our fingers on as a society,
Mm.
but the truth is out there as a subjective thing. So everything, it's true, but it's a different truth for each one of us.
That's right.
And once you have that, now everybody has a personal responsibility to what the truth is by doing their research, and or then you're off on tangents left, right, and center, which is kind of where we are now. And I know that it was entertaining at the time and a great plot device, and gave it that gravitas to say the truth is out there and I'm finding the truth and they're lying to us and all that sort of thing. But at the same time, the bird's out of the cage at that point. You're not going to go, "Oh, wait, everybody, there's one truth and it's this thing," because then that's the conspiracy. "Oh, you're just trying to cover up something, blah, blah, blah," and you're off to the
Well,
races again.
it's essentially the same as having a conversation with a fundamentalist, isn't it? In many ways, you're not going to pierce that. And I guess also, I mean, just to take the burden off your shoulders somewhat, of course, the show did come out adjacent to the rise of the internet as well. So,
Yes.
I think it's no mistake. But I think the other thing that seemed really clear to me rewatching the show is there is almost an innocence to the way that the show looks at, it almost looks at conspiracy as sport, as
Yes.
something that you can do. And I think that's a very different way of looking at that conceptually than we would have if if you look at Black Mirror or any of the current equivalents.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, I did a documentary called The Truth Is Out There. And in 2009, I had a film crew follow me around the world, going to conventions and UFO and talking to some of these people that I knew from my relationship to the X-Files, the Jordan Maxwells and Dr. Roger Lear and Nick Pope and all these guys in the world of UFOs and conspiracy thought and all that sort of thing. And the way we structured it is the idea is that the search for the truth should be fun, because at the end, it shouldn't be the dark rabbit hole that makes you go bananas. It should be like, aha, oh, that's enlightening. That's this right. is another way to look at this. Oh, this is fascinating. And people said, well, why are you giving these nut jobs a platform in your documentary? And I'm like, well, are they not? Yeah. So, there was people in a documentary go, well, the first thing you should know is I'm an alien hybrid. and then she went on, like, that's her opening gambit. But then as you talk to him, it's like, oh, you know what? I would let her watch my pets. She seems very sensible, even if she believes she's an alien hybrid. It has formed herself in a way that she can walk through the world with an energy that I, didn't think was immediately off-putting, right? And so that search for the truth gave you that kind of ability to see people that you would otherwise go, right? And then you can go, oh, here's another aspect of her truth that is fascinating that she shares with us.
It's almost about intent as well, because it seems to me that the desire that the show at least in the 90s satisfied was the idea of kind of being in on some kind of exclusive secret. Right. The idea of discovering something that you're not supposed to know. And I guess the dopamine that you get from that, as opposed to proving and validating some hateful agenda, which can often be the case now. And the other thing that was really interesting, going back and watching the show through the eyes of somebody who'd never seen it before, was how well now, a few years out, those later seasons actually work. Not just the Annabeth Gish, Robert Patrick seasons, which I think really deserve a reappraisal. But seasons 10 and 11, because there's this really interesting subtext that reveals itself of Mulder's befuddlement at the modern state of conspiracies. He almost can't relate to his own quest anymore, because it's become so obfuscated through this idea of personal truth. Yeah. So it feels that that's something that's coming out of that I hear from the work you were doing in your documentary too.
Yeah. And I think that was the writers feeling that too. We all talked about this, the collective responsibility we had for this to spin off into a cultural phenomena that may or may not be beneficial for all involved. And so that befuddlement, but not even that befuddlement, it's just a kind of shock and amazement of like, really, this is what you took away from the show? Is this like that?
Yeah, it's like Mulder's the show talking to the audience in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah. And I know it was like very hard for them to then recalculate. Okay, well, let's just focus on the Mulder-Scully relationship, and to take it away from Mulder being adrift in a new reality that he is almost disassociating from in some of those episodes, right? And it's kind of weird, but it's also the way the show had to go, right? That it's like, okay, we're going to ground ourselves in a new reality as we go forward, because all art doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's art in context, right?
Well, I guess that's the thing as well, because I mean, one of the postmodern elements of the show, I suppose, was that the show itself had such an effect on pop culture that inevitably got reflected back in the world that the show itself was presenting, of course.
Right.
You know, like Scully would say things like, oh, Mulder, their description of an alien is exactly the same as everybody's description because of pop culture. And you're watching the show going, yeah, because of the frigging X-Files. Because of you, your show.
Yeah, exactly. You are the pop culture you're referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know because I know when that first hit me that was weird was Independence Day. And there's a scene in Area 51 and a couple guys are on the thing and they go, yeah, you're watching too much X-Files, lady.
Yeah.
And you know, whoever he's talking to. And I went, oh, wait a sec. You're watching too much and it is altering your, and these now Area 51. Yeah, that you can either use that to tamp down somebody trying to actually figure out what's going on in Area 51, or you can use it as a meter of how much X-Files are you watching that you are now going in that direction, in that line of inquiry. Like, so that suddenly made me go, oh, so that is a pop culture that shapes itself so that you can't actually, it's kind of the snake that eats its tail.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it changed the world. I mean, I know that sounds hyperbolic. This idea of the show as popular culture, I think that if you look at the 90s from a popular culture perspective, I think it's reasonable to put the X-Files on that Mount Rushmore with grunge music and Friends and, you know, a number of these things. It is, I mean, I remember I was an early adopter of the show, being a geek. I watched season 1 purely because I was like, oh, it's starring that guy who played the transgender character in Twin Peaks. That was right. that was my into the X-Files. And I was like, and it looks a bit like Twin Peaks, which I was obsessed with, like everybody was in the early 90s. So I went and watched that. But then I remember couple of years into the show, walking through the high street of Birmingham in England, where I'm from.
Right.
And every other shop had an X-Files display in the window.
Yeah.
You know, it would have standees with the VHS cassettes. It would have books. It would have, it was literally every third shop. It was like more X-Files stuff. I remember my friend and I looking at each other and like, what the hell is going on? You don't see Star Trek The Next Generation in department store windows.
Yeah.
And how was that for you and the people involved in the show? And did it change the feeling on the set? Was there suddenly, were people staying in their trailers longer during that time, or?
No, because it was still family, right? So you still had this family feeling of crew and actors, because we all grew into this surprise together. And so everybody was supporting each other, going, hey, that's really cool. Hey, congratulations on. And so there was nobody recoiled from, oh my God, this is overwhelming. This is too huge. We all kind of really like grooved and surfed with it because it was the relaxed attitude on set and how much fun it was in between takes and everything. It's hard to believe that show that serious would have so much laughter and good times in between action and cut. And or in between cut and action, I mean.
The other thing that was really interesting watching the show is in those pre-Lone Gunmen days is how underpopulated the show feels. It is just David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson. And then eventually, you know, Mitch Pileggi shows up, you guys show up, Krycek shows up, and
Smokey Man didn't even have lines in the first one, right?
Yeah.
He's just in the back, just some guy smoking, and the syndicate comes in, and it's like you just add layers and layers of what the heck is going on, right? And so as the producers said, it's like, oh man, we could just keep adding layers season after season, you know, and just make it more populated, as it were, and more obscure. So they felt elated that the future of the writing of that show was completely wide open landscape that they could go in any direction.
And I've got to ask what Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny would like to work with.
Oh, they were great. David, what a sense of humor that guy had. And martini dry, holy smokes. Sometimes you wouldn't know if he's joking or not. He just, and stare you in the eye and say something really funny. And then you're like, and Jillian warm, so sweet, just like your sister you always wanted. And funny too. She like surprised us all the time when she got to do comedic moments. But you're like, oh, you got some comedy chops on you, lady. And
The blooper reels of the X-Files are
so
wonderful.
funny, right? I know those became the highlight of every Christmas party. Like you go to a Christmas party, but you
Oh, is that what they were compiled for?
Yeah. So the Christmas party every year for every season, we go, and you're in a crowded ballroom in some hotel, and it's like, ugh, gotta stand here. And then it's like, oh my God, here comes the blooper reel, yay! And then everybody laughs, and he's like, okay, good night. I don't have to sit around and do this anymore. And so they started, once YouTube and everything came on, they were like, everybody was getting a copy of those things. And
I had them on VHS.
I think I
I
was
got from
gonna
a convention.
somewhere in the studio, I have a box of VHSs. I transferred a lot of it onto hard drives, but I think I still have a couple old X-File blooper reels there.
Oh, that's
So
amazing. And was there
yeah,
a big dynamic change with the changes of casting in the later seasons? Did that feel very different, or was the change from Canada to America a more
yeah,
traumatizing, I want to say, change for the show?
the move to LA was a bit more surprising uh, because the crew that was there was already fans of the show, but wow, professionals, right? I mean, you had uh, you had Kevin Westmoreland, right? He's from his grandfather did the Frankenstein makeup of Jack Whale, right? I mean, it's a family lineage of makeup artists, and this guy's putting toner on me. What the heck? It was like such an honor. And we had a guy cowboy who was a lighting grip, and he had like a big handlebar gray mustache, and he said, "Oh yeah, my grandfather lit Chaplin movies."
Oh my gosh!
I'm like, what? Like,
Wow. During the big bang of Hollywood.
yeah, and a thing in Hollywood that you don't know that happens is bring your kid to work day. So all crew members bring their kids to work on when they're working on a show and stuff. So the kids get to see, oh, is this what you do, Dad? Oh, hey, that's pretty easy. Oh, yeah, I can see the lighting. And then, and in between, well, there's a lot of sitting around in the studio. It's easy to go, yeah, son, that's your key light. That's your accent light, And then when these guys get a call for a low budget something, you go, yeah, I'm busy, but hey, my kid can do it. And then suddenly that kid's getting credits, and then that's how the next generation goes. So it's kind of this mentorship of multi-generational crew, makeup, hair artist. It's like it's that to me was the funnest thing about moving to Hollywood.
There's another legend you got to work with, and another one of Vince Gilligan's day players is Michael McKean. How was that?
Yeah.
For somebody from a comedy geek perspective, that must have been something.
We had many comedy friends. We both knew Rick Overton. I knew him from Spinal Tap. He was brilliant. He had so many great stories. And I said, I came to a show that Spinal Tap did. It was unbelievable that Canada got this together. Spinal Tap played 3 different time zones, July 1st, all on the same day.
Wow.
So they started at 9 a.m. in Halifax, then flew to Toronto, and then flew and did another show in Vancouver, all on July 1st across the country. And they said, oh my gosh, that was our favorite show we've ever did. It was like you felt like major rock stars because you run from the stage, and there, a helicopter would take you to the tarmac would take you to a private plane would take you to the next one. And so it was always a joy. Every time I talked to that guy, we had so much to talk about in terms of improv and comedy and stuff.
He's got Michael McKean's. He's got balls of steel as well. That guy. I remember he did. I saw him at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert at Wembley Stadium. Spinal Tap played. So wow. You've got like 75,000 people going out live on satellite to an audience of millions, 100,000 grieving Queen fans, and frigging Spinal Tap come on and play Bitch School and or some of their I just thought, wow, you have got, that is a tough gig. You've got courage.
Totally. And yet he's a fantastic actor. he like, when he did Lone Gunmen episodes too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember he's playing Morris, and I got to give him a talking to about, why Joey Ramone's my hero. And it was a monologue, and I'm like,
Great scene.
Yeah. And after one take, he just jumps up the couch and he comes this close to my face and goes, "That was great." Like, wow, what a compliment, man. It was like, he went, that was great. That's your take right there. And then just walked off. So he's like, he's really a joy to work with.
Well, I want to be mindful of your time, and I can also hear my kids starting to kick the door down. But I got to ask you this one question.
Yeah.
Is Langley dead? I've kind of lost track now.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got comics, we've got the TV show, we got Returns from the Dead. Is Langley still alive in your mind?
I think that that Glenn Morgan episode in season 11, where I'm trapped in a virtual server, is probably the best reality. Because you saw the three of us go out, you saw our tombstones in Arlington, though you dug those up in the comic book, which is apparently official canon. We were living under those tombstones in a new Lone Gunmen office, and then at Comic-Con, I was moderating Jillian and Chris and the writers and creators of the comic book. And I said, "Is this official canon?" And Chris goes, "Yeah." And so it's like, "Oh, we're alive. Hooray."
From the quill of the maker.
Yes, exactly. But this that season 11 one where it's trapped in a virtual world that you can't unplug, and it's, a blockchain Langley, as it were. The new reboot that they're working on of the X-Files is going to be not government conspiracies, but AI. And Glenn Morgan pulled me aside at a convention last September, and he goes, out of all the characters that could possibly recur in that show, it's only you that are in a virtual world that could interact with AI.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, don't tell me I'm going to be doing more X-Files.
It ain't over till it's over. And that reboot, the Ryan Coogler show, I mean, I think originally the assumption was that it was going to be a reset, but that's not seeming to be the case now. I know Jillian recently has been making a little bit of noise about being interested. So you never know.
You never know. And I know Chris is working on it, and they're, trying to find their way through it. And if anybody can do it, it's those two.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dean. You're a super generous, awesome guy. And and is there anywhere that listeners or viewers can look out for you online, find your podcast, any of that good stuff?
The podcast is at chillpackhollywood.com. Chillpack was my invention, laptop cooling system,
which I need, by the way. My laptop dies if I have it on for about an hour and a quarter. Isn't that like, is that in development hell at the moment? What's going on with that?
Okay, so I sold the patent to this company, and they asked me a couple questions on its development, and then I see that company put out a different cooling system. So not to be a conspiracy theorist, but they might have bought that patent just to put it on a shelf and not be a competitor to their stuff. So I don't know. I got my money, but so you can't get one of those. But chillpackhollywood.com, and you can email us there. And then we read your questions on our show. So if you need anything, and then I have a Dean Haglund page at Facebook, of course, and my Instagram is Dean Haglund, and other things got hacked, so I don't go there anymore. So, it's good.
Well, thanks again for your time, and again, congratulations for such a long, illustrious career as a founding member of the podcast world. And you look after yourself, and thanks again so much for your time.
Thank you.